Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. And if you want 10% off and 14 days for free, make sure you go to squarespace.com/Incon to start your website. Hello Twitchies, Incon here with another Season 8 Basics guide for you. Today we're going to be talking about the new starter items. They are absolutely fantastic, so we're going to be helping you to buy the correct one for the role that you're playing and the situations that you should be buying them in. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. We are going to be starting off with our supports with Sentinels Gift. This is the cheapest of all the new items. It is only 500 gold, 7 physical protection, 7 magical, 75 health, and 7 MP5. This is basically the Guardian's Blessing from last season, but just better and cheaper. So you're going to get a lot of sustain and you're going to get a lot of bonus gold off of this item. The supports that are trying to buy Sentinels Gift are going to be your traditional, very defensive supports. So think your Gebs of the world, anybody that is going to be maybe not so much in the lane clear department, or that you simply just want to have the sustain in lane that you're not planning on playing too aggressive. As you transform this item, as you get to level 17, remember support items you can buy at level 17. All the other starters will upgrade at level 20. So for the ones we're talking about right now, these will be level 17 upgrades. Sentinels Boom, this is going to be the item on the left-hand side. All the items on the left-hand side of the upgrade trees are one of the natural upgrades to the item, which basically means it's just like the first item, but just a jacked up version. The right-hand side version is going to be something totally different, basically, but they can be really good. And for our Sentinels Gift, this is the one you're going to want to typically buy. This is going to give out 120 physical and magical protections evenly amongst all allies, including yourself. If you are by yourself, you are only going to get 60 physical and magical protections from this, meaning that if you are not around anybody, you actually don't get the full 120 protections. But if you're around one person, then you get 60 physical and magical protections, and they get 60 physical and magical protections. Sentinels Embrace, typically the item you're going to see upgraded from Sentinels Gift. For our second support starter, we have Benevolence. Benevolence is the starter that you want to buy when you're trying to get your lane partner ahead. So this actually takes a little bit of XP away from you as a support and gives it to your lane partner. So traditionally, this is going to be the Hunter. When you level it up later, it goes into either Compassion or Animosity. Animosity is actually not really a support item. It's actually something right now that you see picked up by more damaging characters. So where you see Animosity in the meta is somebody like a Vamana solo who won't buy a starter item at the start of the game, will wait until level 17 until they can buy the full Animosity and then get that 4% damage bonus from their maximum health as magical damage. This works against all gods, minions, etc., but more importantly, it is doubled against structure. So you'll see a lot of characters go for split pushing with this type of build. Yes, it double procs on Zonquiados, stuff like that. The more traditional actual support upgrade is going to be Compassion, and this is going to take 15% damage from nearby allies. The damage reduced is redirected to you as magical damage. So basically, in the middle of a team fight, you will take 15% of all of your allies' damage in your range. This can be extremely strong in a team fight, but do be aware if you go this item, you are going to get burned down crazy fast. Also, quick note, don't really want to get Blink with this, because if you have Blink, you're never going to be able to get it off because Compassion will always be putting you in combat, just to be noted. Our final support starter, we are going to have the aggressive support starter in my personal favorite, War Flag. This is going to give you physical or magical power plus health and MP5. When you get an assist on a minion or jungle monster, you are going to restore health and mana to all allies, including yourself, and you're going to gain movement speed and attack speed. 10 potential stacks. That means up to 10% movement speed and 20% attack speed right out the gate. This is for your aggressive supports, your Seers of the world. If you're running a warrior support, an assassin support, you're going for first blood. You want to pair this, of course, with a very aggressive hunter in the lane. The natural upgrade to this is Wara Banner. This is the one that I would recommend. It's basically just gonna jack it up and make it so you can get up to 20% movement speed and 40% attack speed. You combine Wara Banner with a Talisman of Energy, and the amount of aura, attack speed, and movement speed you're giving out to your team is insane. Spartan Flag is okay. It's gonna spawn a flag that gives increased power to allies around the radius. Honestly, Spartan Flag, one of the least good upgrades in the game, so I would 100% go with that Wara Banner. Next up, we have got the Hunter starter items with our Gilded Arrow. Gilded Arrow gives you a little bit of attack damage, health, and MP5, and every 10 seconds, the highest health nearby enemy, minion, or jungle monster is marked. If you kill that monster, you gain bonus gold and a 20% attack speed buff, and you restore 20 mana. Basically, this is like turning Smite into League of Legends and Dota, where last hits become really important. It's actually quite good for the farm, but can be very, very tedious and annoying. That's just my personal view of it. Doesn't mean it's not good. When you rank up, you can get out the Diamond Arrow, which is 80 basic attack damage, 100 health. When you kill it, you basically get a giant buff. You can get up to 60% attack speed because it stacks up to 3 times. And of course, you get more gold from it. On the other side, you have Ornate Arrow. This is a little bit more interesting. All sources of gold are increased by 20%, and for every 100 gold, you gain 1% attack speed, and you gain 0.8% physical critical chance up to a maximum of 25 stacks. So if you're running a really big crit build, this can actually be a very interesting option for the late game stages. Right now, oftentimes you're seeing this run on late game hunters. So you're trying to AFK farm at the beginning of the game anyway, and then you want to really turn on in the ultra late game. So some characters that this is pretty popular on right now actually is Rama and Artemis. You see it right now. They try to farm, get as much gold as they can. They get into the late game, they go a crit build, and they go Ornate Arrow. In general, this one is slightly more popular than its other. Then we have our one of our sustain items. We have Leather Cowl, also known as Leather Cow. This is going to give you physical power, lifesteal, and attack speed. And when you are near an allied god, you gain 10% attack speed. If you're alone, you gain 5% movement speed. Very nice overall item, only 700 gold. Very safe starter item, works pretty much on all hunters. If you don't know what to build on a hunter, this is the one that I actually recommend going. Its upgrade is going to be Hunter's Cowl. This is the one that you should normally go. Jacks up all the stats. You get 25% attack speed aura and 10% movement speed on the passive, plus all the jacked up stats. The other one is pretty strange. Leader's Cowl. This really isn't for hunters. For each nearby friendly god, you gain a stack of outnumber. For each enemy god, you lose a stack. So basically, if you are literally outnumbering the opponent, you're going to give out power to nearby allied gods. This one is not for you on a hunter, and honestly, nobody picks this up right now because there's nobody that really wants to go Leather Cowl and then would naturally upgrade into Leader's Cowl, since hunters are always going to go into the Hunter's Cowl. For our third hunter starter, we have Death's Toll. Death's Toll is going to give you a little bit of physical or magical power plus health. Every time you hit an enemy with a basic hit, you are going to restore health and mana. Basic attacks that deal AoE damage restore half as much for each enemy hit. So this is if you just want pure sustain, nothing else matters to you. You don't want any other stat. You just want to sustain in that lane. You don't see a ton of hunters pick this up. In general, hunters will lean towards the Leather Cowl over this, but it is an item for you to start with. Later on in the game, it becomes Death Embrace, where you sustain a ton of HP off of this item. And the other option is Death's Temper. When an enemy dies near you, you gain 1 stack of Temper that provides 3.5% increased basic attack damage for 10 seconds, and it stacks 10 times. So while you don't get all that sustain that you're used to from this item, you do get a bunch of damage. Now, a lot of these items as well so none of these items are really class restricted, right? They've got basically recommended classes, but just because they're recommended does not mean you are restricted to that class. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Moving on to our mages now, we have the most popular mage starter item, Conduit Gem. Every second you gain a stack of arcane energy, causing your next damaging ability to deal an additional 2 true damage and remove all stacks. So this stacks up to 20 times, meaning up to 40 true damage, plus it gives you magical power in MP5. This is 700 gold, and you can go right into Rada Tahuti or Spear of Desolation right afterwards. Either way, you get a bunch of potions, a bunch of sustain. This is the go-to mage item. You almost don't even see the other mage items because of how good Conduit Gem is comparably. On the upgrade, you almost always upgrade it into Archmage's Gem. This is just going to give you a bunch more damage when you rank it up. Instead of being a couple flat damage, it becomes 2.5% of your magical power at 20 stacks, meaning that when you use an ability, you'll do an additional 50% of your magical power. So you combine this on a Janus ult, a Ra ult, insert ult, insert ult, insert ult here. Doesn't matter, you just start one-shotting people, which is why you see so much of the Archmage's Gem. Gem of Focus can be interesting for gods that have a bunch of very low cast time abilities, because the more you cast it, the more you get to keep up this buff that gives you movement speed, a damage increase, and reduces damage taken. But honestly, for basically everybody, Archmage's Gem is just better. You can maybe make an argument if you wanted to go like a Zhong Kui or even like a Chang'e style, where you're constantly in the fray throwing out abilities where you can benefit from this damage increase, damage reduction. But honestly, I would recommend basically Archmage's Gem if you've gone Conduit like every time. Next up, we have the Sands of Time, arguably one of the worst starters in the game right now. It's actually not bad at level 1, 30 magical power, 5 MP5, you get cooldown reduction. The problem is all of its upgrades just suck. Pendulum of the Ages, you can get a good amount of raw magical power, but raw magical power doesn't really matter when other items are giving like percentage scaling on magical power. The one cool thing that you can get from this is the alternate timeline. This is basically you get a res on a 10-minute cooldown. The problem with this is that by the time you finish this item, you're only going to have one res. Games are very fast right now, and 10 minutes is simply too long of a cooldown. So for the most part, I would just recommend staying away from Sands of Time. Maybe there's an argument to be made for getting it on like a Nox just to get your cooldown online ASAP, and you do like a Sands of Time cooldown boots Chronos Pendant, and all of a sudden, boom, you've got 40% CDR right off the bat. But for the most part, stick away from the Sands of Time. Finally, for our mages, we have the Vampiric Shroud. Vampiric Shroud gives you power, protections, health, and magical lifesteal right off the bat. Damaging an enemy with an ability restores 6 health and 6 mana. So this is for your life-stealing gods. You're going to see this a lot on gods like Hades, Zhong Kui will pick it up, Anubis, Ao Kuang sometimes pick it up. Those style of gods that want to go into the Bancrofts, Typhon's Fangs, that kind of stuff, that's who you're looking to build this on. Also, just generically gods that you want to be a little bit tankier in the early game. It does give health and physical protection, so you can get quite tanky off of it. Our blood-soaked Shroud is the same version, just all jacked up. This is cool because you get 1 stack of magical lifesteal for 6 seconds, but as long as you keep proccing this, you can infinitely get this lifesteal going up until you reach the lifesteal cap. So as long as you're spamming damage out there, you can keep doing this. So a god like Hebo has the opportunity to stack this all the way up. My personal favorite, though, if you are going to go Shroud, is to go into the Sacrificial Shroud. Bunch of great stats, but your abilities deal 15% more damage, but cost 5% of your maximum health. In general, this is going to give you actually way more damage output in the ultra late game than Conduit Gem's upgrade into Archmage's Gem does, but it's costing you HP for every ability that you use. That means unless you've got either sustain in your kit through some sort of heal, like a raw heal, or if some sort of build mechanic like a Bancrofts or a Typhon's, then this is going to actually bring you way down, and you'll basically start killing yourself with this item. I do recommend when building Shroud to actually, in general, skip getting it at level 1. And if you're going to go rush a Bancrofts, get your Bancrofts first, and then come back into Vampiric Shroud a little bit later. If you're not going to build the Bancrofts Shroud, the Bancrofts Talon, then don't worry about it. But if you're on a god like Anubis, I would actually rush the Bancrofts first before I worried about getting my starter item. And that's basically the only starter item that I wouldn't really get at level 1, besides maybe an Animosity build that you were running for kind of some cheese. Onward to our jungle items now, we have the Boombas Dagger. This is basically the Assassin's Blessing of Seasons Past. You're going to get a bunch of sustain off of doing camps, plus you're going to get a bunch of extra damage on those jungle camps. If you're not confident in the jungle, you don't really know where to go, this is just a generically good item. It's also very cheap. It's only 600 gold. Nothing wrong with getting Boombas Dagger in the jungle. You can rank it up into Boomba's Spear, which, as we mentioned, is just a jacked up version of the original item. So you get extra damage, extra stats. It's all good. But almost every single time you buy this item, you're going to get Boomba's Hammer. Boomba's Hammer gives a bunch of health, mana, 10% pen, and 20% CDR. After casting your next ability, your next auto attack will deal 80 true damage. After hitting a basic attack empowered by the hammer, your active cooldowns are reduced by 1 second and you're healed for 5% of your maximum mana. If you are going a tankier jungle build, if you are on a jungler that really thrives with low cooldowns, Boomba's Hammer is for you. Lots of options with Boomba's Hammer, whether you're running a tankier character in the jungle and abusing the maximum health steal, whether you're running a character that's got really OP abilities and a really high CC and getting that reduction with max CDR plus the extra 1 second plus all the other things you can do. Boomba's Hammer, one of the singular best items in the game. So much potential on so many different characters. Next up for junglers, we have the Eye of the Jungle. The Eye of the Jungle is really for auto attack key kind of junglers. Think about your Ao Kuangs, even in Apollo jungle, because you get 15% attack speed plus your physical and or magical power with HP 5. You do deal increased damage to jungle monsters, but keep in mind you will not get the sustain like you do with Boomba's Dagger, so it's a lot harder to sustain yourself if you don't have some sort of built-in heal like an Arachne who can sustain herself in the jungle. But the cool thing about Eye of the Jungle is that you actually get a ward. Every time you're killing these jungle camps, you get a ward that lasts for 30 seconds at its spawn. That means the Eye of the Jungle is really useful if you're going for invading the enemy jungle. Doing your own jungle, who cares to have a ward on your own camp? But if you go steal their red buff and then you have a ward there for 30 seconds, that's amazing. And no, it does not take up your ward slots. So you still get your 2 wards plus as many camps as you can clear with this out. Really cool, but kind of high risk, high reward item. Seer of the Jungle, I'm not even really going to talk about it. Seer of the Jungle basically sucks. If you're buying Eye of the Jungle, you are always going to go into Protector of the Jungle because it flippin' rocks. Amazing physical magical power, awesome physical protections, awesome attack speed, and while in the jungle, you gain 12% power and protections. This means literally, while you are standing in the jungle, you get a 12% buff to your stats. So if you're in the mid lane, doesn't count. If you're in the Fire Giant pit, congrats, you're super buffed. If you buy the purple buff, congrats, you're super buffed. Protector of the Jungle is an amazing, amazing item. So if you go Eye of the Jungle, you're gonna get it every single time. Next up, we have Mannequins. Mannequins is a jungle item that gives you tons of damage on jungle monsters while also giving you tons of damage on enemy players. Probably the most popular starter item in the game right now. You are seeing this run on Hunters in dual lane, you're seeing it run on Chronoses in mid lane, you're seeing it on Warriors over in the solo lane, but it is technically a jungler item. This is going to give you a bunch of bleed damage that stacks up to 4 times while also reducing attack speed of the person that you're going against. The upgrade that most people go into is Mannequin's Mace, which is just a jacked up version of this item. Extra damage, extra health, and you get that bleed stacking even more. It does way more damage and you get more attack speed slows. This is in general your item upgrade for that you're just gonna naturally go into. A few characters though can make good use out of Mannequin's Hidden Blade. Mannequin's Hidden Blade gives you 75 basic attack damage, some physical protections and damage reduction, which doesn't really matter at this point. But if you have not taken any damage or dealt damage in the last 5 seconds, the next time you attack an enemy god, a jungle monster, a jungle boss, they immediately take 15% of their current health as physical damage and they're slowed by 20% for 5 seconds. This means you can do 15% of the current health of Fire Giant to get it started off. Huge burst. This means that you can slap somebody with the Cabrakan 1, proc this, plus Cabrakan 1, plus a Poly, plus a Soul Gem, plus you get the extra damage from Rada Tahuti. There's a lot of potential with Hidden Blade, so I recommend trying it out on a bunch of different gods. It can be really fun, but in general, Mannequins Mace is the better one, and it is being run in all roles right now. Finally, that leaves us with our solo laners. So let's talk about Warrior's Axe. Warrior's Axe is basically Warrior's Blessing from last season. You get physical protections and magical protections, some health and flat damage reduction, and damaging an enemy god steals 25 health away from your target and restores it to you. Your very general, almost identical to Warrior's Blessing item. When you upgrade it into Sundering Axe, same type of thing, except for the passive becomes an enemy god steals 10% of their current health, and this could affect proc every 7 seconds, so quite strong. On the other side, we have Hero's Axe. When an ally god within 55 units of you is hit by a hard crowd control effect, you give them a shield equal to 15% of your maximum health. So Hero's Axe can actually be very interesting if you're going against a high crowd control team, or if you're running some sort of like Guardian solo, where in the late game you're transitioning into being a little bit more team peel wise, like maybe even a Sobek, where at the end of the game you're not just like doing damage anymore, you're kind of part peeler. Can be an interesting item. In general, you see a lot of people just getting the Sundering Axe because they do basically 10% bonus damage on their ability. So when you see somebody generally tanky over in the solo lane, they usually get Sundering Axe, but both are actually interesting items. After that, we've got Warding Sigil. Warding Sigil is specifically for going against a heavy magical damage team, or even if you're really worried about a magical damage in your lane, maybe you're going against like an Ao Kuang and you're super worried about it. Magical protections and health, and when you're hit by an ability, you gain a stack of dampening, decreasing the damage you take by 5 for 5 seconds. This can only happen once per ability cast and can stack twice. So actually a good amount of damage reduction that comes from this item. Later on, you can upgrade it, get a bunch of magical defenses, and you get 4% reduction in damage taken for 5 seconds, and it can stack 3 times, so you get 12% damage reduction in the middle of a team fight. Can be very effective if you are against, I would argue, for 3 or more magical damage characters, although unfortunately right now more games lean to 4 physical, 1 magical than anything near this, so you won't probably be picking up Sigil that often. And Infuse Sigil. When you're hit by an ability, the Infused Sigil gains a stack. It can only stack once per ability cast. At 5 stacks, it explodes after 0.5 seconds, dealing 400 damage to enemies within 300 units of you. A pretty weird item. This is basically the aggressive version if you didn't really want the magical defenses to begin with. I honestly haven't really seen anybody use this, mostly because nobody's starting with Warding Sigil because there's so much physical damage in the game. Less to say that this is a bad item, more to say it's very situational if against a very high magic damage team, which there's not a lot of right now. Then we've got another situational item called Tainted Steel. Tainted Heal is basically a starter item with anti-heal. So if you're going against a very heavy healing team, maybe you've already got somebody in your lane like a Hercules that's going to be healing, or a Guan Yu, plus they've got like a Ra on their team or a Hel or something, maybe Tainted Steel is for you. So you get physical, magical power and protections, and enemy guys that you have hit have their healing taken reduced by 20% right off the bat. You can upgrade this into Tainted Breastplate, which becomes 50% anti-heal for 8 seconds, which is awesome. And I want to mention right now, a lot of people aren't building anti-heal right now because there was that 30% healing across the board nerf when you're not in combat with an enemy god. A lot of people aren't building anti-heal, which means healers are still really strong. Please build anti-heal against healers. Next up, you have Tainted Amulet. Enemy guys that hit you have their healing taken reduced by 20%, and you're healed for 100% of the healing reduced. This item is very unique, can work on gods that are building super heavy sustain. So if you're going against like a team with an Anubis on it or something and they're life stealing a lot, plus maybe they have like a Chang'e healing, this item becomes very interesting, especially if you're on a god like Cerberus who's kind of already doing this and you can double down on it. Very interesting item, but also super situational. Only do it against comps with a lot of healing / sustain. finally, guys, we have Bluestone Pendant. Bluestone Pendant gives you power, HP 5, and MP 5. Enemies hit by your damaging abilities take an additional 25 physical damage over 2 seconds. This item is considered for solo laners. It's meant for gods like Wukong, who've got 4 damaging abilities that can utilize it well, but it also works in other roles. Like for Hunter, it can work on a god like Uller, Neith, Chiron, because it can give them those extra damage on their abilities for the extra burst. But you do see it most of the time right now over in solo lane on gods like Wukong, on gods like Arthur that have a lot of damaging abilities that can proc it. The natural increase is into Bluestone Brooch. Enemies hit by your damaging abilities take an additional 25 plus 7.5% of their current health as physical damage, can stack twice. This is the natural upgrade. I do like it a lot. Then you have a weird upgrade, Corrupted Bluestone. Enemies hit by your damaging abilities take an additional 75 damage over 5 seconds and have their attack speed reduced by 10%, stacked up to twice. Okay. But for every enemy corrupted, you gain 15% attack speed up to a maximum of 5 enemies. So this is very specifically aimed at auto-attacking hunters that are going to be proccing it. So if you're a solo laner, you're always going to upgrade it to the Bluestone Brooch. But if you're a hunter, you might actually upgrade it into the Corrupted. Corrupted can be really weird to use, though. In general, Bluestone, not super favored right now, but you do see it picked up here and there on certain gods, like we mentioned, like a Wukong. And that, guys, is all of the starter items for all of the roles, what they do, if they're good, where they're good for. So I do hope you learned something today. At the very end here, I just wanted to give out my recommendations of each item for each role, the one that you're going to see the most often and get the most use out of. So if you're a support, you're either buying Sentinels or War Flag. Those are the two that I find are the most efficient right now. Sentinels, if you are going defensive like a Geb. War Flag if you're going aggressive, whether that's a Ymir or assassin support, whatever. Those seem to be the two best for support right now. For hunters, you got a lot of good options. Mostly you're seeing Hunter's Cowl and the Gilded Arrow, but there should also be a notable mention to Mannequin Scepter. Some hunters are able to pull that off. Izanami gets the 2x proc from her autos, sometimes even a Chronos ADC, something like that. You can get a lot of damage value out of it. In the mid lane, depending on who you're playing, your Conduit Gem is the go-to mage item right now. So unless you're playing a hunter middle where maybe you want to end up with something else, Conduit Gem is just the go-to mid item right now. Probably the least variety of any of the roles. For a jungle, you've got Boombas Dagger. If you want sustain in the jungle, it also transitions into that Boombas Hammer, which is fantastic. And also Mannequins. If you want to go aggressive in the jungle, if you want early ganks, early fights, doesn't really matter who you're on, Mannequins works amazing. It works fantastic on Osiris and Bellona. They also like Death's Toll a lot over in the solo lane, so keep that in mind. Arachne loves it. Kali loves it. Anybody you want to go in and get aggressive on early. And finally, for the solo lane, Warrior's Axe, Bluestone, Mannequins, and Death's Toll. All 4 of those seem to do really well over in the solo lane, just depending on who you're playing. A Wukong doesn't want a Mannequins. That doesn't make any sense. He wants a Bluestone or a Warrior's Axe. A Bellona wants a Death's Toll or a Mannequins. Osiris, Death's Toll or a Mannequins. So it depends on who you're playing, but those guys are the starter items you should be looking forward to. Hope you learned something today. This video was exhausting. There are so many starter items, so I apologize if I forgot anything or if something seemed a little bit off, because boy golly, this took a lot of takes. But thank you guys so much for your support, and thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. This video was brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace has made it easy for you to make a website to get all of your hopes and dreams out into the world. Whether you need it to start up a business or whether you need it to start up a blog, either way, they've got exactly the template for you. Squarespace's system will help you pick a design by helping you narrow down the type of template that you're looking for. The more information that you provide, whether you're a blog, whether you're trying to sell food, whether you're trying to show people your art, it'll help you set up the perfect website. And with our special partnership with Squarespace, you can go to squarespace.com/Incon for 10% off your order and check it out down in the description below.